Marcus Thompson stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his expensive navy blue tie one last time before heading to work. As the CEO of SmartBuy, a retail chain with over 50 stores across the country, he had worked hard to build his empire from the ground up. At 42, he was one of the youngest black CEOs in the retail industry, and his success story often made headlines in business magazines. That morning, however, something was bothering him. He had spent hours last night reading through customer reviews on various social media platforms, and what he saw didn't make him happy. While SmartBuy had always prided itself on excellent customer service, the recent feedback told a different story. Worst shopping experience ever. Staff was rude and unhelpful. Don't waste your time here. The employees act like they're doing us a favor. These comments kept repeating in his mind as he drove his Mercedes to the office. Marcus had started as a store clerk himself 15 years ago, and he knew the importance of good customer service. It was one of the main reasons he had succeeded in building such a successful business. Sitting in his large corner office on the 20th floor, Marcus scrolled through more reviews on his computer. His executive assistant, Janet, walked in with his morning coffee. "Janet, have you seen these reviews?" Marcus asked, turning his screen toward her. Janet nodded, placing the coffee on his desk. "Yes, sir. The customer service department has been tracking them. They've increased their mystery shopper visits in the past month." Marcus leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. Mystery shoppers were professionals hired to pose as customers and evaluate service quality, but something told him that wasn't enough. Staff always seemed to be on their best behavior when they suspected a mystery shopper was present. What if? Marcus paused, an idea forming in his mind. What if I went to these stores myself, as a regular customer? Janet raised her eyebrows. "You mean undercover?" "Exactly." Marcus stood up, excited now. "These employees have only seen me in business suits during official visits. They wouldn't recognize me in casual clothes." He walked to the window, looking out at the busy city below. The more he thought about it, the better the idea seemed. Who better to evaluate customer service than the CEO himself? He could experience firsthand what regular customers went through. "Janet, clear my schedule for next week," he said, turning back to his assistant. "And I need you to help me with something else." The next day, Marcus went shopping. Instead of his usual designer stores, he visited regular retail outlets. He bought worn jeans, plain t-shirts, and a baseball cap. He even purchased an old backpack that had seen better days. Looking at himself in the store mirror, he hardly recognized the man staring back at him. At home that evening, Marcus practiced his role. He would be Mike, a regular guy who worked as a construction worker. He practiced speaking differently, walking differently, even holding himself differently. His wife, Teresa, watched him with amusement. "You're really taking this seriously, aren't you?" she asked, trying not to laugh as he practiced different ways of asking for help in the store. "I have to," Marcus replied, removing his cap. "This is important. These negative reviews, they're not just comments on a website. They represent real people having bad experiences in my stores. People who work hard for their money and deserve better service." Teresa's expression softened. This was why she had fallen in love with Marcus, his genuine care for others and his dedication to doing the right thing. "I'll start with the store on Fifth Avenue, Marcus continued, looking at his store locations on his tablet. "It's one of our busiest locations, and it's had the most complaints recently." As he finalized his plans, Marcus felt both excited and nervous. He had no idea what he would discover, but he knew this was the right decision. Sometimes, to truly understand a problem, you had to experience it yourself. That night, as he lay in bed, Marcus thought about all the customers who had taken the time to write those negative reviews. He made a silent promise to them. Things were about to change at SmartBuy. They just didn't know it yet. Tomorrow would be the first day of his undercover mission, and Marcus Thompson, the CEO in designer suits, would become Mike the customer in worn jeans and a baseball cap. The stage was set for a revelation that would change not just his company, but also his understanding of what it truly meant to provide good customer service. The next morning was very different from Marcus's usual routine. Instead of his premium coffee and designer suit, he dressed in the worn jeans and faded blue t-shirt he had bought. Standing in front of the mirror, he adjusted the baseball cap low over his eyes and studied his reflection. The transformation was remarkable. "You look nothing like a CEO," Teresa said, standing in the doorway of their bedroom. She walked over and tugged at his oversized t-shirt, but maybe this is a little too baggy. Marcus shook his head. It's perfect. Nobody would expect the owner of Smartboy to dress like this. He had even removed his expensive wedding ring and left his designer watch at home. The only thing he carried was an old wallet with some cash and a basic smartphone. Instead of taking his Mercedes, Marcus called a taxi. As he sat in the back seat, he rehearsed his story one last time. He was Mike, a construction worker who needed to buy some household items. Simple, believable, and most importantly, forgettable. The taxi dropped him off a block away from the Fifth Avenue store. Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the large Smart Buy sign he had proudly installed just 2 years ago. It was strange seeing his store from this perspective, not as the boss coming for an inspection, but as a regular customer. It was 10:30 a.m. when Marcus walked through the automatic doors. The store was moderately busy, with about 15 customers browsing different aisles. He grabbed a shopping cart and started his observation. The first thing he noticed was the mess. Several shelves were disorganized, with products placed in wrong sections. In the electronics department, he found kitchen items mixed with phone chargers. This would never have been acceptable during his official visits. Marcus pushed his cart toward the customer service desk, where 2 employees were engaged in what seemed to be a personal conversation about their weekend plans. They barely looked up as he approached. "Excuse me," Marcus said, making his voice slightly rougher than usual. "I'm looking for cleaning supplies." The younger employee, whose name tag read Kevin, pointed vaguely toward the back of the store without breaking his conversation. No offer to help, no smile, not even proper eye contact. Marcus made a mental note and headed in the indicated direction. As he walked, he noticed an elderly woman struggling to reach a product on a high shelf. None of the nearby employees seemed to notice or care. He was about to help her himself when a young employee rushed over. Her name tag identified her as Sarah, and she immediately asked the elderly woman if she needed assistance. Marcus slowed his pace, pretending to look at products while watching the interaction. Sarah was patient and kind, even offering to check the stockroom when the specific brand the woman wanted wasn't on the shelf. This was the kind of service Marcus had always envisioned for his stores. As he continued shopping, Marcus deliberately created situations to test the staff. He asked complex questions about product specifications, pretended to be confused about prices, and even accidentally knocked over a small display of soap boxes. The responses he got were eye-opening. Some employees barely acknowledged him, others gave incorrect information rather than admitting they didn't know something, and one even sighed loudly when he asked for help finding a specific brand. But Sarah was different. Every time Marcus encountered her, she was actively helping customers, organizing shelves, or assisting her colleagues. She seemed to be everywhere at once, trying to make up for her coworkers' lack of enthusiasm. Marcus was particularly interested in observing the store manager, David Peterson. David had been with the company for 5 years and always presented impressive reports during corporate meetings. However, during the 2 hours Marcus spent in the store, he saw David leave his office only once, and that was to take a personal phone call in the break room. As the morning wore on, Marcus's shopping cart filled with random items he didn't need. But more importantly, his mental notebook was full of observations that both concerned and angered him. This wasn't the Smart Buy he had built. This wasn't the service his customers deserved. By the time he prepared to check out, Marcus had seen enough. He had witnessed poor customer service, lazy employees, absent management, and one shining star named Sarah who seemed to be the only person truly committed to her job. Something had to change, and Marcus already knew exactly how he would make that happen. Marcus's next move was carefully planned. He pushed his cart to the checkout counter, choosing the longest line deliberately. He wanted to see how the staff handled pressure during busy periods. The line had 5 customers ahead of him, and only 2 cashiers were working despite there being 4 registers. At the counter, a cashier named James was moving so slowly that it seemed intentional. His face showed clear annoyance with each customer's question, and he kept checking his phone between transactions. The other cashier, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, was trying her best but seemed overwhelmed by the growing line. As Marcus waited, he overheard several customers complaining quietly among themselves. One woman with a small child was clearly frustrated, checking her watch repeatedly. Another customer simply gave up, placing his items on a random shelf and walking out. Can't they open another register? Someone muttered behind Marcus. He watched as Sarah, the helpful employee he'd noticed earlier, approached the customer service desk. I can help with checkout, she called to her coworkers. However, the supervisor, Tom, barely looked up from his computer screen. We're fine, Tom replied dismissively. Just continue restocking. Marcus felt his blood pressure rising. This was exactly the kind of poor management he needed to witness firsthand. Sarah gave an apologetic look to the waiting customers before returning to her duties, clearly frustrated by her inability to help. When it was finally Marcus's turn, he decided to test James's patience further. He pulled out several expired coupons from his pocket, ones he had specifically prepared for this purpose. These are expired, James said flatly, barely glancing at them. Oh, really? Marcus acted surprised, speaking in his practiced, customer voice. But they're only expired by a few days. Can't you make an exception? James rolled his eyes so dramatically that several customers noticed. Store policy, no expired coupons. He didn't offer any explanation or alternative solutions. Marcus then pulled out his phone, pretending to search for digital coupons. How about if I sign up for your rewards program? Don't I get a discount? That takes too long, James replied, looking at the growing line behind Marcus. You'll have to go to customer service for that. The total came to $127.84. Marcus pulled out a stack of small bills and coins, counting them slowly. He could hear impatient sighs behind him, but James' reaction was what interested him most. The cashier's face turned from annoyance to complete exasperation. Do you need help counting? James asked sarcastically. Just then, a small commotion broke out near the entrance. An elderly customer had dropped his shopping bags, and items were scattered across the floor. Marcus watched as several employees simply walked past, pretending not to notice. Once again, it was Sarah who rushed to help, quickly gathering the spilled items and offering to help the man to his car. Marcus finished his payment and gathered his bags, making sure to thank James despite the poor service. As he walked toward the exit, he passed David Peterson's office. Through the glass window, he could see the store manager laughing while watching something on his computer screen, completely oblivious to the chaos in his store. Before leaving, Marcus made one final stop at the customer service desk. He asked for a complaint form, which Tom reluctantly provided without even looking up from his phone. The form was wrinkled and outdated, showing the store's logo from 3 years ago. Outside the store, Marcus called his driver to pick him up around the corner. While waiting, he watched more customers leaving the store. Some looked frustrated, others seemed angry, and a few were talking on their phones, presumably sharing their negative experiences with friends or family. Marcus took out his own phone and made quick notes about everything he had observed: the long lines, James's attitude, Tom's indifference, David's absence from the sales floor, and Sarah's exceptional service despite the challenging environment. This visit had shown him more than any mystery shopper report ever could. He had experienced firsthand the deterioration of customer service in his store, and it was worse than he had imagined. But he had also discovered a diamond in the rough, Sarah, whose dedication stood out amidst the general apathy. Tomorrow would bring big changes to SmartBuy, but first, Marcus had one more task to complete. He needed to prepare for the most important staff meeting of his career. Back in his office, Marcus wasted no time putting his plan into action. He called Janet into his office and began organizing what would become a memorable staff meeting. I want every employee from the Fifth Avenue store here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp, Marcus instructed, his voice firm but controlled. Tell them it's a mandatory emergency meeting. Don't give any other details. Janet nodded, already typing on her tablet. Should I inform David Peterson to prepare a report? No, Marcus replied, a slight smile forming on his face. Let's keep this surprising. He then spent the next hour reviewing the security camera footage from his visit, documenting specific instances of poor service and noting timestamps. That evening, Marcus invited Sarah Johnson, the hard-working employee he'd observed, to come in an hour earlier than the others. He had Janet make this call personally, ensuring Sarah would arrive before her colleagues. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the office at 6:30 a.m. He changed into his usual business attire, a sharp charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and red tie. He wanted to create the strongest possible contrast between Mike the customer and Marcus Thompson the CEO. At 7 a.m. sharp, Sarah arrived, looking nervous and confused. She was wearing her Smart Buy uniform, pressed and clean despite its age. Marcus had Janet escort her to the small conference room adjacent to his office. Ms. Johnson, Marcus greeted her warmly, extending his hand. "Please have a seat." Sarah sat down, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, have I done something wrong?" Marcus smiled. "Actually, you've done everything right. I was in your store yesterday, though you probably didn't recognize me." He pulled out his phone and showed her a picture of himself in the disguise. Sarah's eyes widened in recognition. "The man with the expired coupons? That was you?" "Yes," Marcus nodded. "I spent several hours in the store observing how customers were treated. While most of your colleagues disappointed me, you stood out. You showed exceptional customer service skills, initiative, and genuine care for customers." Sarah blushed slightly but sat up straighter. "I just do what needs to be done, sir. It's not always easy, but you do it anyway." Marcus finished for her. "That's exactly why I wanted to speak with you first. I'm making some changes, and I want you to be part of them." Meanwhile, employees from the Fifth Avenue store began arriving for the 8 a.m. meeting. They gathered in the large conference room, whispering among themselves, wondering what could be so urgent. David Peterson arrived last, barely on time, looking slightly disheveled. He had tried calling his corporate contacts to learn about the meeting's purpose, but had received no information. At exactly 8 a.m., Marcus walked into the conference room with Sarah. The room fell silent. Many employees had never seen the CEO in person, and those who had barely recognized him from his brief annual store visits. "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice commanding attention. "I spent yesterday in your store." He clicked a remote, and the large screen behind him showed security footage of him shopping in his disguise. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as employees recognized the difficult customer from the day before. James, the rude cashier, sank lower in his seat. Tom, the supervisor, suddenly found his shoes very interesting. David Peterson's face had turned pale. "What I witnessed yesterday was unacceptable," Marcus continued, his voice stern but controlled. "With one exception." He gestured to Sarah, who stood straighter despite her nervousness. "Ms. Johnson demonstrated everything our company should stand for. While others ignored customers, she helped them. While others complained, she solved problems. While others played on their phones, she worked." Marcus clicked through several security camera clips, showing Sarah's exemplary behavior contrasted with her colleagues' poor performance. With each example, the room grew more uncomfortable. "Today," Marcus announced, "marks the beginning of significant changes at Smart Buy. Some of you will be part of these changes. Others will need to decide if this is still the right place for them." He paused, looking around the room, meeting each person's eyes. "But first, I want to show you exactly what I experienced yesterday, and then we'll discuss how we're going to fix it." The tension in the room was palpable. This wasn't going to be an ordinary meeting, and everyone knew it. The day of reckoning had arrived at Smart Buy. Marcus stood at the front of the conference room, his presence commanding absolute attention. The security footage continued playing on the large screen behind him, showing various incidents from his undercover visit. "Let's start with customer wait times," Marcus said, clicking to a new clip. "Here we see a line of 7 customers, but only 2 registers open." The footage showed frustrated customers leaving the store without making purchases. James, the cashier who had been rude to Marcus, shifted uncomfortably in his seat as the next clip showed him checking his phone while customers waited. His face reddened as his coworkers glanced in his direction. "Mr. Peterson," Marcus addressed the store manager, who was trying to look as small as possible in his chair. "Can you explain why you were watching videos in your office while this was happening on your sales floor?" David Peterson cleared his throat. "Sir, I was reviewing training materials." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Training materials? Let's see what my security team found when they checked your computer history." He clicked to another slide, showing David's actual computer activity, social media, and gaming websites. The room fell silent. Several employees looked shocked. Others seemed unsurprised, suggesting this was normal behavior for their manager. "Tom," Marcus continued, turning to the supervisor. When Sarah offered to open another register to help with the line, he dismissed her. Why? Tom straightened his uniform nervously. I thought we could handle it. You thought wrong, Marcus replied firmly. And this wasn't an isolated incident. He played more clips showing Tom ignoring customer needs while focused on his phone. The next hour proceeded similarly, with Marcus methodically addressing each instance of poor service he had witnessed. He showed clips of employees ignoring customers, giving incorrect information, and displaying negative attitudes. But then the tone changed. Marcus began showing clips of Sarah in action, helping the elderly customer with dropped packages, assisting someone reach a high shelf, organizing messy displays between helping customers. This, Marcus said, pointing to the screen, is what Smart Buy should be. Ms. Johnson wasn't just doing her job, she was living our company values. Sarah sat straighter, though her cheeks were pink from the attention. Several of her colleagues looked at her with newfound respect. Now, Marcus continued, let's talk about changes. He walked to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. First, effective immediately, David Peterson is no longer the store manager. David's head snapped up, his face pale. Sir, please, I can explain. Marcus held up his hand. I've seen enough. Your leadership, or lack thereof, has created a culture of laziness and disrespect. He turned to the group. Ms. Sarah Johnson will be taking over as interim store manager. The room erupted in whispers. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Second, Marcus continued, silencing the room with a raised hand. James and Tom are suspended pending review of their performance. The Human Resources team will meet with you after this meeting. Both men slumped in their seats, knowing their jobs were likely over. For the rest of you, Marcus's voice softened slightly. This is your wake-up call. Starting today, every employee will undergo intensive customer service training. Those who can't or won't improve will be let go. He clicked to a final slide showing Smart Buy's original mission statement about customer service excellence. This isn't just a decoration for our walls. It's our promise to every person who walks through our doors. Marcus then turned to Sarah. Ms. Johnson, would you like to say something to your team? Sarah stood, her nervousness evident but determination clear in her voice. We can do better, she said simply. We must do better. Our customers deserve it, and starting today, that's exactly what we'll give them. The meeting concluded with Marcus outlining specific changes, new training programs, performance metrics, and customer feedback systems. As employees filed out, many looked shaken, some looked worried, but a few, particularly the younger staff members, seemed energized by the promise of change. Sarah stayed behind, still processing her unexpected promotion. Marcus handed her a folder containing her new contract and details of her increased salary. Ready to show them how it's done? He asked with a smile. Sarah took the folder, her expression determined. Yes, sir, they won't recognize the store in a month. Marcus nodded, confident he had made the right choice. The Fifth Avenue store was about to undergo a transformation, and Sarah would lead the way. On this particular morning, Sarah arrived at 6:30 a.m., as she had every day since becoming manager. She found her new assistant manager, Michael Chen, a former stock clerk who had shown exceptional potential, already reviewing the day's inventory reports. Morning, Michael, Sarah greeted, hanging up her coat. How are the new hires settling in? Really well, Michael replied, showing her the previous day's performance metrics. Jessica and Robert are catching on quickly, and customer feedback scores are up another 5% this week. The store had undergone significant staffing changes. After James and Tom's departure, several other employees had either resigned or been let go due to poor performance. Sarah had carefully selected their replacements, focusing on attitude and work ethic over experience. At 7 a.m., Sarah gathered the morning shift employees for their daily briefing. Gone were the days of disinterested staff playing with their phones during meetings. Instead, engaged employees discussed customer service strategies and shared success stories from the previous day. Remember, Sarah addressed her team. Every customer has a story. Our job is to make their shopping experience a positive part of that story. The morning progressed smoothly. Customers noticed the difference. Clean, organized aisles, readily available help, and employees who seemed genuinely happy to be there. The checkout lines moved efficiently, with enough registers open to prevent long waits. Around noon, Sarah was helping a customer find organic cleaning products when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus Thompson's office. You would be visiting the store that afternoon. Sarah smiled, confident in her team's performance. Unlike the previous manager, she had maintained regular communication with corporate headquarters, sending detailed reports and implementing suggested improvements. At 2 p.m. sharp, Marcus walked through the doors, this time in his usual business attire. The difference in the store was immediately apparent. The floors gleamed, the shelves were properly stocked, and employees were actively engaged with customers. He watched as a young cashier named Jessica handled a price dispute with patience and professionalism, exactly the kind of service he had found lacking during his undercover visit. Near the electronics section, Robert, another new hire, was demonstrating product features to an elderly couple, speaking clearly and answering their questions without rushing. Sarah spotted Marcus and approached him confidently. "Welcome, Mr. Thompson. Would you like a tour?" Marcus nodded, impressed by her composure. Together, they walked through the store while Sarah explained the changes she had implemented. She showed him the new employee training room, where staff members could practice customer service scenarios and learn about new products. "We've also started a customer feedback program," Sarah explained, showing him a tablet with real-time customer surveys. "Every comment, positive or negative, is reviewed in our daily meetings." As they reached the customer service desk, a small commotion caught their attention. A customer was getting frustrated about a return without a receipt, the same scenario Marcus had tested during his undercover visit. Instead of dismissing the customer, the service desk employee calmly explained the store's return policy and offered alternative solutions. Sarah watched proudly as her training was put into practice. "Your monthly reports showed improvement," Marcus said, "but seeing it in person is something else entirely." Sarah beamed with pride. "We still have work to do, but the team is committed. Everyone understands that good customer service isn't just about following rules, it's about treating people with respect." Before leaving, Marcus asked to address the staff. Employees gathered quickly, standing attentively, a stark contrast to the disinterested group from a month ago. "What I've seen today," Marcus began, "is exactly what SmartBuy should be. Under Ms. Johnson's leadership, this store has become an example for all our locations. Starting next month, managers from other stores will be coming here to learn your methods." The announcement was met with proud smiles and straightened shoulders. These employees now understood that their work mattered, that they were part of something bigger than just a retail store. As Marcus left, he noticed something that truly showed the change in culture. The elderly couple from the electronics section was leaving too, carrying their purchases and chatting happily about their experience. 1 month ago, they might have left frustrated and empty-handed. Today, they were satisfied customers who would likely return. Sarah watched them leave, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But now, she had a team ready to meet those challenges head-on. 3 months after Sarah's promotion, the Fifth Avenue store had become SmartBuy's flagship location for excellence in customer service. On this particular morning, Sarah arrived to find an unexpected visitor waiting in her office, Marcus Thompson, along with several members of the corporate board. "Good morning, Ms. Johnson," Marcus greeted her with a warm smile. "Hope we're not too early." Sarah composed herself quickly, though she hadn't expected such high-profile visitors. "Not at all, sir. What brings you here today?" Marcus gestured for her to sit down. "We've been watching your progress closely, Sarah. What you've achieved here is remarkable." He pulled out a tablet and showed her the latest company statistics. The Fifth Avenue store's numbers told an impressive story. Customer satisfaction had risen from 65% to 92%. Sales had increased by 45%. Employee turnover had dropped to almost zero. The store had become so successful that customers were driving from other districts just to shop there. "But that's not all," Marcus continued. "Remember those negative reviews that prompted my undercover visit? Look at the recent ones." He showed her the store's online reviews, now filled with 5-star ratings and glowing comments. "Best shopping experience ever. Staff goes above and beyond." Finally, a store that cares about its customers. Sarah felt proud but remained humble. "It's been a team effort," she said. "Everyone has worked hard to make these changes." Exactly, Marcus nodded. And that's why we're here today. The board has made a decision. We want to implement your management style across all SmartBoy locations. Sarah's eyes widened as Marcus continued. We're creating a new position, Director of Customer Experience and Training. We want you to take it. The offer caught Sarah by surprise. But what about the store? She asked, thinking of her team. Michael Chen has proven himself more than capable, Marcus assured her. He's ready to take over as store manager. You trained him well. As if on cue, Michael knocked on the office door, carrying his usual morning reports. Seeing the corporate visitors, he started to apologize and back away, but Marcus called him in. Perfect timing, Michael, Marcus said. We were just discussing your promotion to store manager. Michael looked shocked, then turned to Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. You're ready, she told him. The rest of the morning was spent discussing Sarah's new role. She would be responsible for training managers across all 50 SmartBoy locations, implementing the successful strategies she had developed at the Fifth Avenue store. Later that day, Sarah gathered her team to share the news. The announcement was met with mixed emotions: joy for her success, but sadness that she would be leaving. Don't worry, Sarah assured them. I'll still be around, just in a different capacity. And Michael will continue everything we built together. Jessica, the young cashier who had grown so much under Sarah's guidance, raised her hand. Will other stores really be able to do what we did here? Sarah smiled. With the right leadership and commitment, yes. What we created here isn't magic. It's about caring for our customers and each other. That can be replicated anywhere. As the day went down, Sarah walked through the store one last time as its manager. She remembered her first day, when the aisles were messy and customers were frustrated. Now, the store hummed with positive energy. Employees were engaged, customers were smiling, and the atmosphere was exactly what Marcus had envisioned when he went undercover. In the break room, she found a surprise party waiting for her. The team had arranged a small celebration, complete with a cake decorated with "Thank you, Sarah" in blue frosting. We wanted to show our appreciation, Michael said, speaking for the group. You didn't just change the store, you changed us. As Sarah looked around at her team's faces, she saw confidence where there had once been apathy, pride where there had been indifference. These weren't just employees anymore. They were professionals who understood the value of their work. Marcus, who had stayed to observe the day's operations, joined the celebration. Ready to change SmartBoy forever? He asked Sarah quietly. Sarah watched as her team mingled and laughed together, remembering how different things had been just a few months ago. Yes, she replied confidently. If we did it here, we can do it everywhere. The transformation of the Fifth Avenue store was just the beginning. Sarah's journey from helpful employee to corporate director was about to inspire a company-wide revolution in customer service. 1 year after Marcus Thompson's undercover visit, SmartBuy held its annual company conference. The grand ballroom of the Hilton Hotel was packed with managers and employees from all 50 stores. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as Marcus took the stage. A year ago, Marcus began, I walked into our Fifth Avenue store dressed as a customer. What I saw that day concerned me deeply. He paused, looking across the room. But today, I want to share what happened next. The large screen behind him lit up with photographs and statistics. The transformation hadn't just affected the Fifth Avenue store. Under Sarah's guidance as Director of Customer Experience, the entire company had undergone a remarkable change. Our company-wide customer satisfaction rate is now 89%, Marcus announced proudly. Sales are up 35% across all locations. Employee turnover has decreased by 70%, but numbers don't tell the whole story. He gestured to the side of the stage, where Sarah Johnson stood. Would you join me, Sarah? Sarah walked to the podium, looking professional and confident in her navy business suit, quite different from the store uniform she had worn a year ago. The audience applauded warmly. Sarah didn't just improve one store, Marcus continued. She created a blueprint for success that has transformed our entire company. Her training program has been implemented in every SmartBuy location, and the results speak for themselves. The screen showed clips from various stores. Employees helping customers with genuine enthusiasm, clean and organized aisles, efficient checkout lines, and happy customers leaving with their purchases. But perhaps the most telling success story, Marcus smiled, comes from our Fifth Avenue location, where it all began. Michael Chen, now the store manager, stood up from his seat in the front row. Under his leadership, the Fifth Avenue store had maintained its excellence and even improved further, consistently ranking as the top-performing location in the company. And what about the employees who didn't meet our standards? Marcus asked rhetorically. The audience grew quiet, remembering James and Tom, who had been let go. Well, their replacements have proven that with the right attitude and training, excellent customer service isn't just possible, it's natural. Sarah took the microphone. When Mr. Thompson gave me the chance to manage the store, I didn't just see it as a promotion. I saw it as an opportunity to prove that treating customers with respect and genuine care isn't just good service, it's good business. The screen showed more statistics. SmartBuy's market share had increased significantly, and they had opened 5 new locations in the past year. The company's success story had been featured in business magazines, and their customer service model was being studied by other retail chains. But the real heroes, Sarah continued, are the employees who embrace change. People like Jessica, who went from being a new cashier to becoming one of our regional trainers. Or Robert, who now manages our customer service department. The audience applauded as Jessica and Robert stood up, both wearing their new corporate uniforms. They were just 2 examples of many employees who had grown professionally under the new system. Marcus returned to the podium for his closing remarks. A year ago, I went undercover because I was worried about our company's direction. Today, I'm proud to announce that SmartBuy has been voted Best Retail Customer Experience by Consumer Choice magazine. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Marcus held up the award, then handed it to Sarah. "This belongs to all of us," she said, "but especially to every employee who comes to work ready to make a difference in our customers' lives." As the conference concluded, Marcus and Sarah stood together, watching the celebrations. "Did you ever imagine this would happen when you helped that elderly customer with his dropped packages?" Marcus asked her. Sarah smiled, remembering that day. "No, but it taught me something important. Every interaction matters. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can start the biggest changes." The story of SmartBuy's transformation became a case study in business schools. It showed how one undercover visit, one dedicated employee, and one leader's willingness to make bold changes could revolutionize an entire company. As for Marcus Thompson, he never needed to go undercover again. But every so often, he would visit different SmartBuy locations as himself, watching with pride as his employees demonstrated the kind of service he had always envisioned. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The end of this story marked the beginning of a new era for SmartBuy, where excellent customer service wasn't just a policy, it was a way of life.